Hi folks, in this video tutorial I'm going to go through Spring MVC web application. So we're going to have 3 pages and we're going to have controller with 3 methods. So we will see how these pages will interact with those 3 actions, and then all the way via JPA, Hibernate and MySQL. So everything which I'm going to show you here is clearly step by step. The source code is shown here, and also it shows the big picture of how the project is structured and what the code is. So here I'll focus more on demonstrating how the whole application works. So firstly, we have already seen MySQL, so we need to set up MySQL. So I'm going to start the MySQL server. So I start the MySQL daemon -- console. This was covered in detail in setting up and installing MySQL server in one of the previous tutorial. So this is going to start my MySQL server, which I've got already a database and an account table with some data. Then we are going to access this data via Spring MVC, going through the web layer and then the service layer and then the data access object layer. So the MySQL database server has started. Now I'm going to go and start the Tomcat server so that I can run the web application. So here I've gone into C tools. I've also covered this installing and setting up Apache Tomcat in one of the previous tutorials. So let's start the server now. Startup. It has to go into the bin. So cd bin type start bat. So now the Tomcat server is starting. So once the Tomcat server has started, we can go to the web browser and we can interact. So I've already archived built the WAR file, web archive file. I've already deployed. It's called the simpleweb.war. So this tutorial will basically extend the previous RESTful web service, and this tutorial is all about creating a web application. So I'm going to copy the URL from here. So this is the entry point. So it's basically localhost 8080 because I'm running the Tomcat in my local machine on port 8080. Simple web is the web context. So that's the simpleweb.war file, web archive file that we created. So that was deployed into the Tomcat's web apps folder. So if I go into C tools, and if I go to Apache Tomcat here, into web apps, and you can see the simple web. This is where simpleweb.war is what we deploy, and Tomcat will automatically explode that into the folder which will have all the artifacts. And then entry is where the dispatcher servlet, Spring MVC's dispatcher servlet is mapped to. UI is where the controller is mapped to, and accounts is one of the actions that when it hits the controller. So if I copy this URL and then I open a web browser and put on the URL on the browser, and you can see on the Tomcat server it's going to go to the controller, then the service layer, and then it goes to the data access object layer. So it's hitting the database, selecting using Hibernate, it's selecting all the data, and then you will get a screen like this. So basically what you are seeing here is the HTML code. JSP, servlets, everything is on the server side technology. So to demonstrate that, F12 key, or you can click on this and you can go into developer, and then you can go into debug console. So the developer debug. So it's called this debugger here. So you can click on the debugger, or you can click on F12 button. So click on the debugger, that opens this. So as a web developer, whether you're using JavaScript based technology, we are using web backend, if you want to see what's happening on the browser end, you need to bring this up. So I can also use F12 key to bring this up. So I'm using Firefox at the moment. So here you can do console, you can also do inspector, and one of the key things is the network, to see what's coming in and out of the network. So here, if you look at the HTML, so you can see we have made a GET request. So this is in the HTML. So if you want to see any RESTful web service, you can click on XHR. These are where the web service request will come through. So green status of 200 HTTP status means it's successful. The action, the method, web action method is called the GET. Sometimes when you submit a form, it will be POST. So it's a GET here. And the URL we hit is the accounts here. You can see the accounts. And you can see the headers. These are the header information. What was the content length that was sent was 2024 byte, the date, and what accept language it is, what the encoding, and so on. And then if you look into params, if you pass any parameters, here we're not passing any parameters. And we can also see the response here. So this is the response we're getting back. See, John R255, John R255, 123 is the ID, 123 is the ID, and you can see the ID 123 is an href itself, and it is making a call to account details /123. So basically it's making another call to the backend server. And here also see all these 4 entries. So you can see the response that the server has sent to the browser. Now, if you click on this 123, it's going to drill into only that particular record. So basically, this is here is saying call this account details action with 123 as the parameter that get passed to the backend server. So now if I click 123 here, it has made another call get, and you can see it here. And if I click on this, it will give you the details and see this is what the server had sent back. So you can see the show accounts is a title. So the show accounts title should be at the top. And then you can see 123 is the ID, 123, name is John R, name is John R, balance is 255, the balance is 255. And this is also a GET request, and this GET request was sent to localhost 8080 domain, which is this same machine, and so many bytes were transferred. So now if I go back to the previous page, so this is what is showing all the records. Now I'm going to do a post request. Add new account is a post request that allow me to add a new account. So if I click on add new account, so basically it's not a post request. So basically you're doing a GET request to say give me an empty form. So you can say 200 is a GET method, display form is what the backend action that was called. And if you look at the code here, basically it's going and fetching an empty form. So basically here you get the form data, new account form, action is new account, method is post, and these are the values ID, name and balance, ID, name and balance. All these values are empty and you need to fill it up. So I'm going to now create another ID called 775 and name is called Samantha and amount is say $265. And now if I click on save, I'm going to make a post request. You can see in the form. So this is what which is showing in here, and it's going to make a post request, and it's going to go back all the way to the server controller, then the service layer, and then to the backend, and it's going to create an entry in the database. And then the whatever the action, then it will return with a list of new record added. So if I now go and click on the save button, it's going to post. Now you can see it's a post. It has posted to the thing called new account. This is a URI. We'll look at this in the code. And now if I go and look at this back, we should see that Samantha that was added here. It is 775 Samantha $265. And if I go and select this, it will show what the response that has come back from the server. So it's basically have ID, name, balance. That's what is here, ID, name, balance. It will have the URI at the top to display. See, here it is, href display form, add new account. So it's going to hit the display form and add new account, and it's going to show John, Peter, Joanne, all these records in here. So now let's go and look at the code. So this add new account is saying it's going to hit the URI href of account, sorry, not account details, add new account. Here is going to be the display form. So if I go to my controller here, so this is the simple ORM persistence is my code. So if I go to source main Java, if I go to controller, it is a UI controller. You can see the context is UI. So before it goes to the UI, basically in the simple web configuration, I have already set up the resolver, view resolver, and we are going to use JSP as the view resolver, and JSP is going to reside inside the webinf views, and it's going to have a suffix of JSP. So if you are using a RESTful web service, you don't need a view resolver because it will be basically JSON or XML data. But when you're building web applications, you need to have a proper view resolver. It could be a time leaf, it could be JSP. So in this case, we are going to use JSP. So once you have that set up, then in the controller, you can see the display form. So when it hits a display form and when it hits this UI, then the entry form was already set up via the Spring Web initializer saying anything with entry /*. So if you have in the URI the web entry, then asterisk means anything after that is going to hit the Spring MVC dispatcher servlet. And once it's hit the Spring MVC dispatcher servlet, then you might have number of different controllers. So how does it know which controller to use? Here we have a RESTful web service controller. It's going to only hit this if it has v1 forecasting in it. But in this case, we are using a UI controller because it's got /UI, and this also got /UI here. So it's going to hit that particular controller. Once it hit that controller, it got number of different methods. So what method is going to hit depends on what comes after that in the URI. In this case, we are going to have new account here. So if you click on the add new account, so you see add new account, it's going to hit something with display form. So if you go to the display form here, it is going to hit this display form and it's going to execute this method. And all this method is going to do, it is saying display form, and it is expecting a get method. So if you put post here, this method won't get called because we are making a get request from the browser, and then on the server side we are saying handle a get. Then it won't find that particular method and it will say URI not found. So here it's saying get request, and all it is returning is a simple model and view, and is saying it is returning a JSP called new account. So this new account is JSP's name. So there should be a JSP called new account.jsp, and then this is the form. When you fill up the form, this is the parameter we're going to use it. So new account form, and new account is the backing object. So in this case, it's an empty object. So account object is where we have mapped a backing object to the form fields, and also this is the object where it's got Hibernate annotations as well, so that we pass it to the DAO layer, and Hibernate use those annotations to map to the columns in the table. So this basically returns a new account.jsp page, which is a very simple JSP page with all the values, and it knows how to. So if you go into the webin views, there should be a new account.jsp. So that's what it is, new account.jsp. So if I open the new account.jsp, so this is a new account.jsp. We are using a few tags. We are using Spring's form prefix and Spring URI. So that's why the libraries we have already brought it via the pom.xml file. And here you are using Spring tags, form method is post, and action is going to be new account. So this action is going to be new account, and the model attribute is going to fill up is the new account form. And then you have an ID, name, and balance. So when I make this add new account, basically I get a form back, and then if I select here and look at it here, I know that action is going to go to the new account. So basically when this sends back, so this JSP is going to spit out an HTML. All the JSPs get converted to servlet, and then servlet is going to send some HTML code back to the browser. So the code you get converted from here into the browser will look like that. So basically you got the form, new account post, ID, name, everything is blank. So you fill up this form. So I'm going to put 345 this time. I'm going to say Daniel, and then I'm going to say $600 as balance. So when I click on save, it's going to post it to new account action. So if I go to my controller here, we're going to say this is a RESTful web service controller. This is a UI controller here. There's going to be, so what was the action again? New account. So if I go here, there should be a new account action here. Here's a new account. So, and also it is accepting a post, because when I go and click on the save button, it's going to make a post request, and that post request is going to come here. It's going to get into this method, and automatically the filled in form details is a new account form. It's going to be mapped automatically to the account object. How does it know to map it to the account object? Because if you look at the new account form here, we are saying the input ID is going to map to ID in the new account form. Input name is going to map to name, path is name. Input balance is going to map to balance. And this new account form is nothing but account.java. So if I look at the account.java on the backend here, ID, name and balance are exactly the same name. So this is our model. So that's why we call this model view controller. So we are already looking at the controller, new account. This is the controller, new account JSP is the view, and this is the model, the data. So whatever you put in the form gets sent back, and we know that new account form, which is the account backing bean, that's just a name. That's basically mapped to the model object, which is the account, and we know the exactly same name, ID, name and balance. These ID, name and balances are going to be mapped to these ID, name and balance. See ID here, name here, and then balance here. So when it gets to the UI controller, you're going to have an account object that has got all the values that user entered on the browser. Then it's going to call the service layer. It's going to go to the service layer and it's going to call the save account. So if I press the control button and click on the service layer, it takes me to the service layer. So service layer doesn't do much here. It's going to call the DAO layer. So normally service layer is where if it's going to make multiple database calls and things like that, you will be doing transaction management in the service layer. You can add some new business rules, maybe before saving it, if you want to set some values, you want to calculate some interest rate or whatever, and then save it. So you can put additional business logic here. And here, because we are not going to do any additional business rules or business logic here, it's going to go to directly to the DAO layer. And if I click on the open implementation, it's go to the DAO layer and it's going to call the Spring JPA. This entity manager is a JPA class, which is an interface, and it's going to call the thing entity manager, and it's going to start the transaction here. It's going to persist the account, and it's going to commit the data to the database, and then it's going to return true. And once we come back here, then I'm making another call to the service again, and I'm saying give me the account so that I can see the account that was added. So this goes all the way back to the database again. It's going to get all the accounts. It's going to do the model and view, and it's going to set the model into the accounts.jsp page. So this add object here, you can see string attribute name. Sorry, this is the attribute name, and this is the account. This account is the JSP. When you click on the model and view, you put the string view name as well. So this is going to look at the accounts.jsp, and here we are setting the model with an attribute name of accounts, and accounts is where all the accounts data, this list of accounts, is going to go. So now when we go and save it, it's going to come here execute this, save the new account to the database, and then it's going to go to the database again, get all the accounts, list of accounts, including the new one we just added, and it's going to display it on the screen. So I click on save. You see now it come back, get all the list of items, and it's the new one, 345 Daniel is here. And if I click on it, and this is HTML that has come back. See, you don't have any JSP tags or anything like that. This is purely HTML. So what has happened is, after it says accounts and return model and view, is going to go to the accounts.jsp page. So if I go to the accounts.jsp page here it is, accounts.jsp page, and it's going to, all these is going to be get evaluated to a servlet, and servlet is going to do a lot of out.println, which is going to spit out the HTML through the wire into the browser here. So what you see in the browser is purely HTML. So the JSP is a server-side technology. Everything happens in the server side. So if you go here, then you have the prefix and tags, and you can see here we are setting the URL here so that when we click on this, we can drill into that particular one. So this is where when you click on, I can hover here and then see what is going to be like. See here, it's going to click on UI. So if you look at it here, you can see it's going to pass account details and 345 the ID to the backend. So here, add new account is going to make a URL. So you use a tag C URL. C is from the JSTL, one of the JSTL tags. Is going to say display form. So that's why you are saying here, if I go up, this is basically the display form. You can see the URL here. If you hover over it at the bottom, you can see display form here. And then you're going to have ID, name and balance. Then you're going to say for each of them, it's going to loop through. So the accounts is the one from the UI controller. We are passing all the accounts. So it's going to go loop through the list of accounts one by one, and it's going to display it. So here is going to loop through accounts one by one, and each account is stored in a variable called account. Then it's going to say account.name, account.balance. These are the fields in the model. So the model has got name, ID and balance. So it's going to say, okay, give me the name, give me the balance. And then to get the account ID, it is also going to get the account ID, but we also constructing the account details, and we are constructing as a URL so that we can click on the URL here and we can drill into it. So here if I drill into this 444, you can see at the bottom it goes to account details /333. So, or if you go 345, it's changing to 345 here. So the reason we are able to do that is because you can see here we got account details 333, account details 444, and so on. So it's going to display. So all these are going to display as it is, and this one is going to be displayed as an anchor text. So you can click on it and you can make the next call to the server. So now if I go in here and drill in one of these, we're going to send account details and the ID here, 775, 345, and so on. So if I go and look at that in the UI controller, you can see there is a UI controller that takes account details, and there's a parameterized value here, account ID. This account ID will automatically get substituted with 33775, 345, whatever the ID we are passing here. So each one of these is having a different ID, so that get passed to the backend. It comes in here, it gets captured via the path variable. The string ID will be captured. So it basically account ID will be captured via here into the string ID here. Then you can call the account service, and you can go back to the database and say, give me just this account details. So it goes to the database, pass the ID, and based on this ID is going to get just one account, and it's going to display the account details. So if I want to drill into here, I press the control button, you will see an underline here. I can open an implementation. It goes to the service layer now. Service layer doesn't really add much value here. Then it's going to the DAO layer. So I click on the DAO layer, open implementation. It goes all the way back. It's going to use the Entity Manager JPA, and via Hibernate it's going to do a select A, which is the account, from account A where A.id is equal to ID. So basically it's saying select this account where account ID is equal to this ID, and you're passing the query ID via the set parameter here, and this is just to print on the console to see what's happening. And it's going to make a call to the database, just get one account, and it's going to return it back to the UI controller. UI controller is going to set the next page, which is going to be the account details.jsp page, and with the account is set with a parameter of account. So now if I go and open the account details.jsp page, which is the third JSP page, it's going to go to the account details.jsp page, which all it is doing is just displaying all the values. So it's showing the account ID, account name, and account balance. And that's what we are getting in here. If I click on 775, I'm just getting ID, name, and the balance. So basically what I've demonstrated here, everything is shown step by step in the Spring MVC tutorial. So you can go through, you can copy the code, and you can create and practice. So basically what we have demonstrated is from the web browser, the UI browser, we are making an HTTP call here to the web layer. In the web layer, we are using Spring's MVC. So Spring MVC internally uses servlets and JSP and so on. So it hits the web layer. So this is the basically protocol dependent layer because we are making an HTTP call. And it receives the values, it maps to the Java POJ objects or whatever. So the account is our model. So it's mapped to the model. Then it goes to the service layer. So service layer in some cases add value. In our case, it's not going to add any additional value. There's no business logic because it's a very simple example. It's going to call the DAO layer. And the DAO layer is going to use Spring and Hibernate and JPA. It's going to go to our MySQL database, retrieve the values, or save the value depending on what call you are making, or retrieve one particular account, and then it's going to return it all the way back. So for anything from here onwards is a protocol agnostic layer. So if you are using a mobile client or you are using another protocol or whatever, it's a standalone Java, anything, that can always come through different protocol layers into this protocol agnostic layer. So here you need HTTP to talk to via the internet network connection. You need to use HTTP, and then this is a protocol agnostic layer. So you can also write a standalone Java class that comes to the service layer and can go to the database as well. But if you want to talk to HTTP, then you need to use Spring MVC, Servlet, and JSP, which are HTTP protocol aware technologies. And what we have seen is basically high level Spring MVC. This is what happening here. So we got the browser here, client browser. So that's what I demonstrated here with the client browser. I showed the debugger. You can bring up the debugger with developer and debugger here. So you can see what's happening under the cover. So you go to the network and you can see what the HTML, what calls are get called and what's get returned by the server into the browser. So if I go back to the diagram again, this is a bit of a mistake here. This doesn't go directly via here. So basically from 9 onwards, it goes back to the front controller. Then front controller is going to output string into the browser. So it doesn't go directly like that here. It's going to go via the front controller. So basically it comes in here, you type some URL, it's going to hit the server because you got the domain name localhost 8080. Then it's going to look at the context, or in this case you're calling a simple web. So if it is a simple web, it looks at Tomcat, will say, okay, I've got a simple web deployed here. So the Tomcat will look at the simple web and it's going to go into, so the web apps here is going to drill down into the simple web. And then once it goes in the simple web, it's going to look at Spring MVC, is going to look at, oh, it's entry / asterisk. So I've got entry / asterisk in the URI. So it's going to be handled by the dispatcher servlet of Spring MVC. It's this front controller pattern. Everything comes through this front controller. Then front controller is going to look at entry, and everything after that is going to look at whatever is in the URL, or it's going to decide which controller is going to handle it. So in this case, we have multiple controllers. In this case, the UI controller is the one has got the UI in it. So basically, it's going to, anything with the UI is going to go into the front controller here, and and the front controller is going to use the model. In this case we are using account.java. Then it's going to go use a service layer, DAO layer, and Hibernate, and it's going to retrieve the data. It's going to map the data into a list of accounts or whatever using the model, and it's going to select a particular view. So it's going to be account details.jsp or accounts.jsp. So views are basically demonstrated here. So anything the model and view, whatever you pass here, accounts is a view. In this case, model and view, new account is a view. So if I hover over here, you can see what it takes. It takes a view name, model name, and the model object. And here, this model and view, if I hover over here, it can say it takes the view name. So we don't have to provide the suffix as accounts.jsp because we have already configured that via this configuration, web configuration, to say the suffix is going to be JSP. So if it is a time leaf, that suffix can be .html. So if I go to this UI controller, it automatically knows that it's going to be a JSP page. So it's going to be accounts.jsp. It's going to set all the model data and forward the control to the JSP. Then JSP is going to iterate through and is going to do whatever it has to do, and it will create an HTML page. So JSP essentially get converted to a servlet. Servlet will have out.print lines, which purely sends HTML back to the browser, and that gets displayed on the browser here. So this is going to be purely HTML here, what you see. So if I go and hit in here, network, and I'm going to see what's in the HTML. If I select this, what gets sent back is an HTML. You can see the headers, and also you can see the response that was sent back. And also you can see the preview here. It shows whatever it shows there. So it's very handy to debug your web application to see what the server has sent. So if I go back in here, and then it's going to select the view resolver, then the JSP is going to look at the model, and we have already saved account list or whatever with an attribute name. JSP is going to loop through those list of accounts, and it's going to create HTML pages, HTML code, and this HTML code is via the front controller is going to be sent back to the browser. So all the browser sees is HTML here. It gets an HTML, it makes a request all the way back, it goes to the controller, it goes all the way to the database, it selects gets the model populated, will be the account with values set up like ID, name, balance, everything mapped, and then it's going to save that to a model, and the model is going to have a name like a form or whatever, so that the view can go and look at these model values, and it's going to automatically create the HTML code, and it's going to send the HTML code back. So the benefit of this is everything is separated. So you got the controller, it's here. The model is where it's going to be populated by the controller. The controller populates the model by going all the way to the service layer and getting the data from the database. And then it's going to pass the control to the JSP, and the JSP, and also it tells what the model name is going to be. So JSP will go and look at the model, and it gets all the values, and it will automatically convert that to the servlet here, and servlet will output the HTML, and that HTML will go back to the front controller and all the way back to the browser. And what you see in the browser is basically the HTML code when it comes back. So I won't go in detail about all the layers and code. We have covered a lot of the service layer, JPA, everything in one of the Hibernate tutorials, how Hibernate works, how JPA works, and so on. So if you had been following the tutorial step by step all the way, so and also the full code is here, so you can basically practice this. You can copy these codes. All you have to do is create the relevant packages in your Eclipse, and you can copy here. You can press Ctrl+C and paste it, but I encourage you to type it if you are new to Java, so that way you'll get a lot of hands-on experience. Thank you.